Hello, and welcome to Lifeline. My name is Kedrick Sledge, and I'm your host. Today we're talking about HIV and AIDS and its impact, because HIV and AIDS affects us all in some way. Today my guest is Mrs. Zena Age, and the name of her organization is Anise Incorporated. Hello, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good to see you. I'm doing great.
Same here.
I'm doing great. Tell me a little bit about your organization and its mission.
Of course. Okay, Anise Incorporated. Anise Incorporated was created September 13th, 1996, the day that Tupac died. The reason why it was created was because of gaps in services as it relates to the affected population. I am not infected with the virus, but I am psychologically affected with the virus. In the 1990s, the community-based agencies that was being created based on peer concept, where it was either HIV positive, have substance abuse issues, and then you created your issues, where I felt that it was self-fulfilling prophecy. But their logic related to HIV and AIDS was, if you positive, I'm positive, then we could work together. And my logic was, both of us having sex, I just didn't get caught. So one of the things that I needed to realize is that they wasn't dealing with the affected population. So I was dating a woman, her name was Tony, and she actually adopted a child. Well, she didn't adopt a child because disadvantaged socioeconomical people just don't adopt legally. They actually say, I'm taking this child because your mother is on dope. So he was born in 1981. His name was Dennis Epman. They moved from New York to New Atlanta about 92, 93. So if you look at anything related to socioeconomical levels, we know that the South is 10 years behind with everything negative and 10 years ahead. 10 years behind everything negative, such as HIV. Our knowledge is 10 years behind. So what happened when he moved here, the doctors didn't know he was HIV positive. So I actually took him to my daughter's pediatrician, and the doctor gave him some antibiotics. 2 days later, we took him to Scottish Rite, and they said how long he was HIV positive.
Wow.
So this is how we found out. So we're thinking that he was one of the first children that was born with the virus, because his mother was on heroin at the time. So what took place after we took the child home, no doctors, no health providers, no one talked to us about our clinical needs like they do with addicts. They talk to the addicts, but they don't talk about the psychological issues related to someone who's affected, that's living in a house that's dealing with these psychological issues or health disparities such as HIV. So when I went to the house, everybody had plastic forks, plastic spoons, because nobody had the knowledge. So I went looking for agencies, and I wasn't able to find any agencies to deal with affected population. So Anise was created from that.
Has there been any improvements in HIV and the AIDS rate, in your opinion?
I have to go into the history of certain programs and why they was created, because of the gaps and because of the lack of education related to specific populations.
Okay.
The first thing is, one of the things that we have done here at Anise was create several programs, and these are the push cards. The program that came after We Want to Know was A-Flash. A-Flash came about because we realized after the children get to a certain age, from maybe 12 to 14, we have to break the children, the females, up into a separate situation. So what we do with the A-Flash group, this is where we're dealing with teenage pregnancy, HIV, domestic violence, and unhealthy boundaries. And we say unhealthy boundaries instead of low self-esteem, because nobody's not going to raise their hand and say, I have low self-esteem.
Right.
So what we did with this A-Flash program, now we call it a B-Flash program, because we need to teach the males the same thing, because they take a penis and a vagina most of the time to make a baby. You know, you can still do it in the air, but you know, our population. So what we're doing now is creating a program where we're teaching males about teenage pregnancy, domestic violence, low self-esteem, and domestic violence. So we're teaching both genders related to that, right? So then the program was grandparents' hands. This program was created because my aunt died of the virus in 1995. 95, 96. So she got into the church. Everybody in New Orleans knew this person was positive. Again, secrecy, shame, and guilt, right? So what happened on her deathbed, she said, create a program. So our niece is 10 years ahead because I'm creating programs because of issues that are going on within myself and within my family. So Grandparents' Hands was created. So now Grandparents' Hands is a big deal because the virus has changed populations. So people over 50, if you Google Fort Lauderdale is the highest population. Because of what? The blue pill, Viagra. So what's taking place is the men are able to have sex. So the women can't make babies, so they free, right? So the men are able to have sex, so they go out and have sex. So the men who's bisexual, the men who's tapping out, they're coming back home. Their husband, their wives don't know that they're tapping out. They're coming up with the virus. So people over 50 are getting the virus like crazy because of Viagra. But what I teach is the 2 blue pills. So what happened is there's the Viagra, and then the adolescent population back in the days when you had your sugar daddies, you didn't have to do nothing. But right now you have to have sex with them. So that the virus is increasing with this population because a lot has to do with people are able to have sex now, right? So then there's the other pill. This is how I teach this knowledge because I want people to think peace, 2 blue pills. There's Viagra, what's the blue pill, and they have this blue pill called PrEP. PrEP is a pill that's like birth control. So if you are not positive and you're dealing with someone who is positive, you can take this PrEP pill every day, and it will bounce off the virus. So I teach people about the 2 blue pills relating to that. So relating to the virus is still spreading in the African American community because I feel of secrecy, shame, and guilt. No one is talking. They are not educating the population about the virus, and the population that they're educating are what they call MSM. But if you're not on the HIV island, what does MSM mean to you? Morehouse School of Medicine. But MSM is men having sex with men. So I have an issue with the society and the mainstream have a tendency to try to teach our people other acronyms like GLBTQ, XYZ, ABC, 1, 2, 3, MSMs, instead of saying homosexual, bisexual, and straight. So that's why the virus is spreading due to the lack of education and knowledge.
Can you share with everyone the difference between HIV and AIDS?
Okay. There's 2 differences. All right. HIV is what you inquire. You inquire HIV. You get this virus, human efficiency virus. You get this virus when you have unprotected sex with your mucous membrane. Your mucous membrane is your mouth, your vagina, and your anus. That's it. Mucous membrane. Point of entry for IV drug users. So what happened is, when you get that virus and you have unprotected sex, that's how the virus actually get into your system. So what we need to teach people is how the virus is transmitted instead of the behaviors that are associated with what people are doing.
How would you say HIV and AIDS impacts your mental health?
I would say, let me finish that thing. So HIV is what you acquire, right? So then what happened is after your T cells go underneath 200 T cells, so you average between 800 and 1500 T cells in your body. So when your body go under 200 T cells, then you start having opportunistic infections. So that's when your body start breaking down. So shingles is nothing but chicken pox again. So your body don't know that it has been sick already, right? So your immune system start breaking down, and this is why we want people to get tested early, because people don't come in until their immune system is broken down. So if they take this medication, if you look at this medication like an M&M, right? Peanut M&M. So if you find out you got the virus and you have like maybe 600 to 800 T cells, right? You find out that you're positive. They give you medication. This medication is going to coat the virus so it won't mutate, right? It won't mutate. So it coats the virus, you won't mutate. So you never will go into the AIDS stage because you're taking your medication. So when you don't take the medication, then the virus starts mutating. So when the virus starts mutating, your body starts getting sick. So when your body starts getting sick, you can't take the same medication you took before. That's why they call it cocktail. So those are the 2 differences. So we try to get people tested very early so they won't get into the AIDS stage. So there's no reason why people should be dying of AIDS besides secrecy, shame, and guilt, and refuse to get tested.
We're going to take a break. from Lifeline on the Old Fashioned Health Network. Welcome back to Lifeline on the Old Fashioned Health Network. Before we left, we were talking about some of the impacts based on various communities of AIDS and HIV.
Yes, one of the major impacts that we see at Anise Incorporated, first I want to explain holistic harm reduction.
Okay.
Anise used the holistic harm reduction approach, which is a contemporary approach where we look at the whole person, where we are doing human rights and public health together. So when we talk about the holistic harm reduction, we're looking at the mind, body, and soul. So when we look at that, when people walk into our doors, we deal with active addicts.
Okay.
In the way that we do that, we don't call our clients, we call them members. So I see people on the street, I'm like, you're a member of Anise, you're a member of Anise. So what we're doing, we get rid of the stigmas and the isms relating to being part of a community-based agency. Right. So one of the things that we do is instead of saying substance abuse, because if you say substance abuse, no one is going to raise their hand. But if you say substance use, people are going to raise their hand. Mm-hmm. So when we look at the holistic harm reduction, we are trying to minimize whatever that social determinants of health that is, minimizing their ability to achieve goals that they are not mastering their addiction. So one of the things is when we look at that, we are dealing with active addicts. But I want people to understand when they say active addicts, it's not just drug addicts. People are addicted to chaos. People are addicted to sex. People are addicted to church. People are addicted to confusion. People are addicted to food.
Gambling.
People are addicted to gambling. Right. People are addicted to lifestyle. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about addictions, we're talking about all addictions. And you still have the same mindset no matter what that addiction is. I'm a workaholic, but the society is not going to demonize me, even though my body's going to have all the psychological effects that I'm going to have if I was on dope, if I was doing any other addiction, but they're not going to demonize me because all the gratification that you get from being a workaholic. But addiction is addiction is addiction. So when people look at addiction, they need to look at addiction as what you're addicted to before you can start just judging other people with their addictions. Okay. So the holistic harm reduction approach is getting rid of all the isms besides dogism. So dogism across all religion means I am. So that's the ism we need to focus on and get rid of all the other isms so we can start dealing with our issues before we start blaming other people for our issues that are not being resolved. Okay. So another issue is we say emotional support instead of mental health. Because if you think mental health, you're going to automatically think the people on the street that's crazy, the paranoid schizophrenic people, which are some of the most brilliant people in the world over the 21 years. They just had a nervous breakdown and they stuck in trying to relive that scenario that's in their mind. That's what it is. But when we talk about emotional support, we're talking about emotional support where our members don't realize that we have licensed clinicians here because they don't know that they get mental health services because we call it emotional support. Okay. So it's called word games when you're dealing with populations that's dealing with isms as it relates to mental health, substance use, and HIV.
Okay. How does AIDS and HIV look based on age, income, and education level? How does it look differently?
HIV looks just like you and I. How about that? HIV look like you and I. So people who are HIV are human beings that look just like us. So what I dislike is that they have this stereotype that they only think people who have the virus are gay black men, which is not true. It's not the gay black men that have the virus. It's people who look like you that have the virus and people who look like me that have the virus. So there is no people who look like your grandmother that have the virus and your grandfather that have the virus. So you need to get into the mindset of the virus look like you and I. So if you don't deal with your unhealthy boundaries and they catch you on a Friday, Saturday night at Edgewood, then you could tap into the wrong person and you'll be living with the virus as well.
That's true. Makes sense. How has medications improved and access to those who need it?
Yes, I talked a little bit how the medication improved already when I talked about that. So the medication has improved, but the medication is not going to improve if we cannot improve the stigmas as it relates to HIV and AIDS. If we do not improve the stigmas as it relates to mental health. If we do not improve substance abuse. until we get rid of the isms and the non-judgmental, people are not going to feel comfortable enough to come get tested, to take the medication to save their lives.
What are some of the taboos when it comes to HIV and AIDS?
That is a nasty disease, that only prostitutes get it, only gay men get it, that you have to do something wrong to get the virus.
Right.
I did this article, it's called The Veil of Secrecy. I did it in 1999, right? So when I did this article, it's like, are you the victim or the villain? So check this out. It's a cool scenario, right? So, and you can Google this, publish all this stuff, but that's irrelevant. It was something that happened. I wrote about it, got it out of my spirit. So what took place was, it's like a black woman get the virus. Mm-hmm. So it's like, so the black woman is like, are you going to treat me like a victim or a villain? So if the woman is doing politically the right thing, staying at home, doing all the stuff, and the man is tapping out and get the virus, she's going to be considered a victim. A black woman don't want to be considered a victim. But if a woman is out here and she's doing the same thing that the men doing, because we got women that are in relationship but they still hoes. You know what I mean? It is what it is. So they're paying for it one way or another. Yeah. But if you get it doing that, then you consider a villain. So until we deal with victim and villain, African American women is not going to identify being HIV positive. Again, because of the ism as it relates to sexual preferences.
I like that answer.
That's the truth.
I like that answer.
ANICE is the only agency in the state of Georgia that is doing research-based study with the transgender population and with the bisexuality population. We're doing the bisexuality population because I'm bisexual, I'm not crazy, and I'm not confused. They think if you're bisexual, the GLBT population don't take you because they want you to be gay. You confused, you need to be gay or straight. But how you gay and you got 4 children? You had sex with a man sometime, but they try to make you choose. So if you're bisexual, you're confused. So what ANICE is doing, like all the other programs, we're doing research studies on bisexuality. So we're doing a publication related to that. So I want to educate people on HIV, what health disparities related to public health. Homosexual, same. Bisexual, same. Homosexual is same. Bisexual is male or female. Heterosexual is one. So if you look at bisexual, homosexual, and heterosexual, then that's it. In the mucous membrane, all the other is irrelevant. We have gender identity and gender preference mixed up instead of looking at the act, which is homosexual, bisexual, or heterosexual. And if you keep that mindset and stop trying to get into these little categories that we can't count you, this new generation want to be queer, they want to be fluent, they want to be all these letters, but we can't count you in the system. You're not labeled, you others. So if you others, guess what? We're not going to get no other money. We're not going to get no other nothing. So if you have to look at statistical purpose, you need to do homosexual, bisexual, and heterosexual if you want to stop this virus in the socioeconomical level that we do not have the money for.
Okay. You tell the people out there how they can reach and support your organization.
Yes. ANICE is the only African American agency in the AIDS walk that's using a holistic harm reduction approach. And we need support. ANICE is 21 years old. We need support. Our website is www.anice.org. And I actually want to talk about one more program, which is crossing all socioeconomical levels. Let's look at the crack epidemic, right, in the 80s. So if we look at the crack epidemic in the 80s, they wanted to put all of us in jail, right? So now, all of a sudden, it's not heroin, they prettied it up and made it opioid misuse, right? Because the socioeconomics who are getting it are the rich people who can make decisions. So now you're not going to jail if you're doing opioid, they're giving you treatment. Mm-hmm. So now they legalize syringe exchange. So ANICE is doing syringe exchange also. So we do syringe exchange at ANICE. We don't question it. You come in here, you get your syringes. You can get syringes if you're shooting up steroids, if you're shooting up heroin, if you are shooting up hormones because you're trying transgender, or if you're shooting up for diabetes. we do syringe change. Once again, we're trying to get rid of the isms related to syringe change. But if you follow the dynamics of the system, they was putting us in jail when it was African American people, when it was crack cocaine. Now that it's rich people of all socioeconomical levels, they are trying to create treatment and programs. So there's abundance of money for this opioid epidemic. That's the only thing Trump is doing right. That's the only thing that's really connecting us, is this opioid, just like it did with the what you call Woodstock. Right? So the opioid epidemic is connecting us. So it was music, rock and roll, and now it's drugs. So when we look at the history of how they're doing addiction, they're doing it based on socioeconomical levels. This is why it's important that African American people or people of color are behind the tables, or sitting behind the tables, so we can make decisions. So right now we have nieces and nephews of House of Representatives and senators that are white that are dying like crazy. So now all of a sudden the money is coming to that population because it had hit home. So one of the things that I want y'all to know about our niece is that we do not see, we see socioeconomical levels. The thing that I want people to realize is that when you think you need to judge someone, I want you to think of a secret that you are ashamed of, that you don't want to tell anyone. And when you think about that secrecy, shame, and guilt, I need you to think about that when you have somebody else across your table telling you about their issues.
Any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Peace behind power. Peace behind power. And peace behind passion and power to the people. And please, our niece need help. Our niece need help at this point. We need help. And I hope y'all support us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching Lifeline on the Old Fashioned Health Network, promoting good health inside and out.